You follow General Daramon into the ice chambers, away from the orc ambush. You don't know how many dead you left behind, but you know you need to get away. He points over to the opposite side and motions, "Men, there's a way out." You follow him across the chamber, but the ice beneath you begins to cave away, steam rising all around you, a hissing crack as General Daramon is pulled into the mouth of this massive insect-like creature. Roll for initiative.
Hello friends, and welcome back to the Hall of Craft. So today I've got another painting video for you guys, and it's going to be the Remorhaz Frostworm sculpt from Reaper Miniatures. And I'm really excited about this one because the lore behind the creature is super interesting, and it reflects through the paint job, because it's a creature that's hot on the inside, but it lives in a cold climate, so it has to blend in. So how do you blend those warm tones in with those cool tones? I've had this one on my shelf for a little while, and I've been looking forward to doing it. And I figure it's also a good way to practice with the airbrush, because there's going to be a lot of blending going on, and a lot of colors that you don't want touching each other, like the reds and the blues. You don't really want those to blend, because then it'll be purple and everybody will be sad. So let's just jump right into it. I'll show you how I accomplish this. Okay, so we got a frostworm from Reaper, which I'm going to paint up here. But the first step of any miniature painting process is to put the plug in the sink and give these boys a good wash, because I don't want any mold release on there.
Okay, so once that's good and dry, I'm going to take some E6000 and one of my cork bases. Here's the video in the top right if you don't know how to make these. And I'm just going to stick this guy together with some E6000 and a toothpick to spread it around. And then I'll lay a bunch on the bottom and stick them onto a base. So now I'm just going to take some PVA glue, and I'm going to use it around the sides of him where he meets the base, and I'm going to spread it around with another toothpick, really thin. Once this is all put in place, I'm going to dip him in sand essentially, so I just want enough to have the sand stick to him, but not too much because I don't want it to pile up. So once that's dry, I'm going to kind of pat it off and then brush it off with a nice wispy brush. And I'll pour what's left back in the container. So I noticed that his fins were a little wonky, so I'm going to just heat him up with a hairdryer and then kind of bend that back in place and hold it the way I want it until it cools back down. Okay, time to coat. I have some Vallejo surface primer here in the airbrush. It's a gray, you can't really see it go on the white Mini, but it's going. So I'm just going to cover him pretty thoroughly in this stuff, and including his base, because I want him to be easy to coat. Normally I like to use a black, but because we're going to use a lot of light tones on him, gray works better. So I'm going to be using Reaper paints for this. Here's a quick shot of all the ones I'm going to be using. I actually do forget to include one in that photo, and that's going to be the aged bone. It's kind of an add-on at the end. I wasn't really planning to use it, but I just changed my mind towards the end. So I'm just going to toss my darkest blue here in the pot and start coating all the areas that I think are going to be blue. Just building it up nice and slowly. I don't want to lay it on too thick. Okay, so once that's dry, I'm gonna throw some lighter blue into the pot, mix it together, and then just start hitting the highlight areas on them. Because I'm just putting light coats, this dries really fast, so you can pretty much mix up the next color and start blasting it on. So that's going to be all of our blues. Worked our way up from dark to light from the list I showed you before. And then we're going to move on to the reds. So I'm going to make sure to get the inside of his mouth and then the fins on his back. And then I'm also going to highlight his belly with these red tones. So starting with the dark red, this is going to look a little dramatic at the beginning, but it comes together at the end. So just have faith in the system. Don't worry too much about kind of getting some red onto your blue here. You're going to have to go back in with the brush and touch that up at the end. It's going to splatter a little bit. Okay, so now I've added more of a Phoenix red into the pot. Just mixed it in with the reds that I already had. And I'm going to hit all those same areas, but I'm not going to go out as far. So on the fins, I'm not going to go all the way to the tips, and on the belly, I'm not going to go all the way to the sides. Important to make sure you get the mouth as well, because you want it to look like he's kind of glowing from the inside. So this really starts to take life once you add a marigold yellow to the pot. Really gives it that glowing look. And with this, I'm making sure just to hit the middle of his belly and just the base of his spines. And for his mouth, I'm just kind of putting the airbrush in and giving it a quick spray and then pulling away. So now we're all the way at our golden glow, and this is where it really pops. Okay, so once that's dry, like I said before, I'm going to go back in with the blues that I was using before, and I'm going to touch up some of the areas where I may have oversprayed. I've watered this down quite a bit, so it's not a full thick coat of paint. The areas where I needed to touch up were like the base of his bases of his arms and kind of the edges of his fins. And I'm gonna get the cloud blue and pretty much fix up that entire area at the top. Making sure to take this part very slowly, because the last thing I want to do now is splatter some blue on my red. So at this part, I start contemplating what I'm going to do for his head and his spines. I didn't want to just throw more blue on him, so I thought, what if I make it look like it's like a bone? So here's where I pull out the aged bone, and I start hitting up all of the kind of carapace looking parts around his head and all of his spikes and spines. Because the only other areas on this miniature where I have painted the carapace are his belly. So I don't really have like another area to reference. So, and I don't want to paint his head to be glowing red. So I thought that this was a good solve, and I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. Also gonna get the little fins on the underside of his big fins, the little spines in there. I'm gonna paint those H-bone as well. I'm also gonna take the H-bone and pick out some of the scales around his head, just to add some more detail up there. So now I'm going to dry brush him, and I thought about using a very light blue on the blue parts and kind of a golden glow on the red parts, but I figured that it might be better to unify this whole piece together. So I'm just using a pure white, and I'm really lightly dry brushing the entirety of this guy. It's going to pop out all the details, and it's going to give some common ground between the blue and the reds, so that it kind of seems like it's part of the same creature. So once that's done, I'm going to go in with a pure black on his eyes, just to give him that dead, evil creature look. That heartless monstrosity. It's just going to devour your party alive. So now I have my blue wash here, the Drakestone, I believe, from Citadel. I'm going to water that down with a flow improver quite a bit, because I still want this to be light. I really don't want it to be a dark piece, and the Citadel washes are pretty intense. So I'm just going to make sure that I get all the blue areas, and I'm going to be pretty careful not to get it on the red, but I do get it in a couple spots here, and it's not the end of the world. I'm just going to take a wet brush, or a damp brush, sorry, and brush it off before it dries. So just once you're done washing all the blue, just take a quick look at all the red parts and make sure you're good to go. I'm also leaving the bone parts as is. I didn't wash them at all. I wanted them to look nice and clean. I thought about using maybe a brown wash and then going back in and dry brushing them again, but I didn't want this guy to look like he was a skeleton. So now I have the smallest brush I have, or close to it at least, and I'm just going to put a white dot on the top of both of his eyes to give them a shiny look. Very carefully. Okay, so now I'm getting out the craft paint because I don't want to waste all my pure white on his base. I'm just going to take some craft white and start really vigorously dry brushing the base. I want it to look snowy. It's already got kind of a blue look from all the excess wash that fell on it and the excess spray from when we painted him in the first place. So that's a good base. So I'm just going to really dry brush so it looks snowy. So that doesn't take very long to dry at all, so I'm going to take the black out right after that, and I'm just going to do what I always do and give it a black frame on that base, including the bottom. This does a wonderful job just bringing the whole thing together. Make it pop on the table. So I actually decided that the wash made it a little too dark, so I just do another quick dry brush of it with a white just on the blue areas. And I'm calling it done. Not too bad.
And that's it, friends. That's all there is to it. I hope you had a good time. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you paint this mini, because there's a lot of different opinions on this one and a lot of different executions, but I'd love to see yours. So let me know. If you had a good time, give me a thumbs up. I'd really appreciate it. It'd help me out a lot. And subscribe if you want to see some more content like this. I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good one. And give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. And why am I grabbing my ears?